Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Indie Insights session. I am beyond excited to have a very short and sharp presentation today before we get on to the man, the myth, the legend of Jimmy. But I'll bore you with some updates on what's happening with the IMAA, and then we'll get to, after entrees, we'll get to main course. So thank you for joining, and we'll just do a little acknowledgement to country.
In the spirit of reconciliation, the IMAA acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connection to the land, sea and community. We pay our respect to elders, both past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. Under the guidance of Reconciliation Australia, we have developed a reconciliation action plan founded on 3 core pillars: education, influencing positive change, and taking tangible action through our involvement with the IMAA program and other sponsored projects. The IMAA is committed to creating a safer place for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, both within our network and more broadly within the Australian media landscape. Reconciliation is a journey, and we are on that journey together.
Fantastic. I also extend my respects to the Darrawong people where I'm coming from today. So today it's the Indie Insights session. It's the third one we've done. It's being recorded for those who can't make it personally and be sent out. The agenda, just a short update, what you need to know about what's happening with the IMAA, a couple of key takeouts from the census. Then we're going to move on to main course with Jimmy and ask him some questions about his journey and a short conversation about what's coming up. But let's just move forward a little bit. A short update on our end. We have done a number of initiatives, probably firstly with the launching of Out of Home most recently last week, as well as cinema and also TV one. And then we've got regional and audio coming up and also digital later on the year. We've launched a bunch of deals supporting the independent sector. We've also celebrated NAIDOC Week as well with a bunch of interviews with our First Nations friends. And we've also done a scavenger hunt in Melbourne and also a P&P night. We had a trivia night in Sydney, brought to us by Spotify. We did a leadership walk through Redfern, which was quite empowering, led by Tonic, and walked through the community and spoke to many of the leaders there. We had a bad Christmas jumper night in Brisbane for Christmas in July. We also did a graduates breakfast for people coming through the IMAA Academy for 60 odd graduates. And that's a little photo of some of the people throwing their hats up in the air from the graduation party. And I think we've got one coming up in Newcastle as well the next day. So we've moved around the country and done a few of these, and we'll continue to do as people go through. I probably want to say at this point is that, you know, if anyone hasn't signed up to, if your business hasn't signed up to the Academy, I probably suggest that you need to be a part of this. It's ridiculously cheap to be to get the training. There's 8 media courses and 21 other courses in there that's going to help your career, covering off everything from Media 101, TV, cinema, out of home. That brings us up to date. And next we've got coming up is regional, audio, premium content and news, and then digital, and then we might go into a phase 2 of briefing, schedules and those kinds of things. We've got 650 plus registrations, probably 700. I think 7 came on the other day, which is really good one. So many of the partners are already part of this program, but if you're not on, I would ask your HR team to really look at it. Reconciliation last week, I was just having a bit of a conversation that I had the pleasure of guiding 17 media people, a senior delegation of media people through the Alice Springs to our First Nations charity, the King's Narrative, to see it firsthand. Last year we had the opportunity to go, and this year we brought along I think it was 7 or 8 of our partners and 8 of our members, and it was such a special experience, like nothing I have ever ever experienced anything like this before. And I think if you've spoken to your peers, there wasn't a time where one of us didn't break down into tears at some point. It was that moving and powerful. We slept out in the stars on the second night. Some slept in tents, some slept out in the stars. We sat around, we listened, we spoke. We launched a mobile bar service. This is me getting my hair cut there. Probably the best haircut I've ever had, to be perfectly honest. So that's Tyson launching it. We went for a swim on First Nations country. This is where probably no other white person has probably ever swum here. So it was an incredible experience for us to go onto their country. This is Tyson and his youngest talking to us about the clock of time and how long First Nations people have been on this country compared to white Australia. More around the tents, and that was a look at our experience out there. You might see some trade press about it this week or last week. We also launched a Female Leaders of Tomorrow program with probably a bunch of you guys. It's led by Wendy Gower, and this is some of the shots from it. This will be rolled on every single year. Kath O'Connor is front and center of it. We've got a bunch of CMOs and a bunch of your leaders as well being part of the program. So it's something that we hope to do every year. And we're really, really excited that this kind of rolls up and kicks off next month. Quick snapshot of the Indie Census. I'm moving as fast as I can because no one wants to hear my voice. But this is a little bit, if you're a bit of a media nerd like myself, you always like to see these numbers and what's happening out there in the marketplace. First up, we asked our members about what is doing well, what's hot, what's not. Really, really interesting. What is kind of moving forward, but the big things is BVOD CTV, which we see every year. Video, digital video is really, really strong. Probably at the expense of digital display is really, really hot, and out of home's had a really, really good run as well. So there's some of the bigger numbers that are coming through from that point of view. From the indie side, we know that probably BVOD CTV probably indexes about twice as high with the indies. For whatever reasons, for the targeted reasons, but it's really, really, really hot in front of mind. Everyone's predicting the market, as we know, it's going to be a soft second half of the year. 59 are predicting it's going to be slightly softer. It's coming down to economic conditions. Number one, consumer confidence is the number one thing that's driving that. Programmatic and platform costs, digital platform costs have gone up. And then client confidence. And that kind of ties into number one, consumer confidence, client confidence. Everyone's a little bit nervous. But what we do see is that probably the indie markets are not as affected as much as maybe the other markets, because we're not held to global international budgets. Many of the budgets are held here. But again, everyone's quite bullish and say the market's going to be softer, but they're going to be growing. So the biggest thing is the canary in the cage of, will you be putting on more staff? And it's 25, 60% are saying they will be growing. So that's really, really strong. I've seen Jimmy's office, and every time I see it, it grows. So I think he can probably agree that he's having a very, very good run. Sustainability is something that's really important as well. I bang on about this, but I think that it's something that's going to affect all of us in the next probably 6 to 18 months. We see this in our numbers that whilst it's somewhat important, it's going to be something that's going to be affecting us in the future. When companies like Goldman Sachs and those companies are starting to look and invest in business that are sustainable, that's going to come down the food chain. It's going to come down to the agencies, all agencies, and it's going to come down to to all the vendors as well. So just something to keep an eye on as we start to, in the next few years, ask more questions around, how sustainable some products are versus the others. So keep an eye on that. This is an interesting stat. About 80% of agencies now are full service. When I say full service, I mean traditional and digital. There's only probably 4% of agencies that are just traditional. Now, this is just disappearing all in all. And probably the next time we run it, there won't be any, purely traditional agencies or purely digital agencies. It's just a fascinating stack because it leads into the next slide, which I'm just going to spend a few minutes on, because I think this is probably something that we see quite a bit, is that buying. There's a massive appetite for buying traditional media via digital pipes. Right, and you can see that 4% of agencies are planning to buy traditional media through digital pipes. And this will just grow and grow and more as the lanes converge of digital agencies who are moving into traditional spaces. So many of you might have agencies who are started out as SMO agencies. They might have progressed to display and social, and now they're buying out of home, and they're buying out of home, BVOD, CTV, audio through digital pipes, and then they get a sniff of like, oh goodness, we can now buy. We're going to ask for actually all of the TV budget or all of the audio budget now that we've got a bit of this. So in the next couple of years, you're going to see coming through who you might not have heard of before, because they're these digital agencies that are moving through, and these lanes are converging and crossing over. So it's a really, really interesting stat that's coming through. Now, this is our third Indie Insights, and it's featuring our very special guest, the man, the myth, the legend, the man that's won more awards than I've had dinners, the golden boy of the media industry, the man's smile that can launch 1,000 dental products. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Jimmy Hyett. Jimmy, thank you for joining us. I know you're a busy man. Say hello to everyone.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Now, I'm going to ask you a bunch of somewhat awkward and uncomfortable questions. If anyone's got a question as well, feel free to throw it in the chat, and I'll do my best to do it. Okay. Jimmy, can you tell us a little bit about your journey to as starting out in the industry, where you've been and how you come to this place of, running one of, if not the hottest indie agencies at the moment?
Yeah, so my career in media has been around 22 years. I actually started on the sales side in print sales, which then translated, that was my first job in media. Uni, left school after year 10, just wanted to get into the workforce. So went from a surf shop to a surfing magazine, which was where I started, back when magazines were still alive. And then from there, joined Total Advertising back in the old days, before it became PhD. From PhD to Zenith to outdoor sales, selling billboards across the country. And then from there to Highland Media to Mediacom. And then around 8 years ago, decided to embark on the Flow journey. We didn't start as Flow. We started as, I was filming and just doing some video work on the side, and a couple of my video clients said, can we buy media through you? And that's sort of how it started. So it was an interesting way in, but going out, and then about 8 years, started as media and production partners. And then 2 years after that, we changed to Flow once we actually found our personality. But it's been quite a journey and super exciting. I thought media was my passion for most of my career. Just love the industry, the people, the energy, the vibrance. But when I actually started the business, I realized business was my passion and media was my skill set. So it was super exciting, and still is exciting to this day.
And tell us a little bit about this is Flow. Where are you at today?
Yeah, so Flow has had probably the last 4 years, we've very much grown and progressed massively, both with the quality of work, with the people, the staff, and clients as well. So now we're around 40 people at Flow, billing about 70 odd million in media through the year, a really diverse range of clients, everything traditional, digital. Yeah, in most categories we have people in. As a business, culture is critical for us. Probably the number one thing, and probably this the reason for our success, is we've never lost someone from Flow to another agency ever in the 8 years, which is a pretty wild stat when you consider all the staff movements that happen in the industry. So culture is important, and I think that's what really resonates with our clients. So for us, we've got big growth ambitions. As Sam mentioned, we just moved offices because we got squeezed out of our previous one. So we're in a great space, more room for growth. We've got a full leadership team now, leadership team of about 9 people in everything from data science to strategy. We've got digital leads, investment leads, research, insights, and yeah, really, really exciting time for us across the whole agency.
And you've won a bunch of awards on culture. You won a personal award for I think it was Ad News or BNT recently. But I think I'm probably the ward that you will get as best view in Sydney. For those who haven't seen it, it is a pretty spectacular view.
There it is. There, not too shabby
as well. Jimmy, tell us a little bit something about yourself that we wouldn't know.
Shit. Something that you wouldn't know is I've done many roles in my lifetime. I was a painter, so for 2 years I worked 7 days a week as a professional painter, as well as while I was working in an agency. So I was doing that, and I was a barista, but I've never drank coffee before.
Really? And you have also represented the state in touch football.
Yep, touch football, tennis, and a few other sports.
Oh,
love touch.
Okay. What are your thoughts on the next 6 months, the economic headwinds? How are you guys finding it?
From client-wise, the feedback from clients is no reduction in spend. Nearly every one of our clients are seeing an increase in spend, and that's driven a lot locally. But some of the global clients that we've got, like John Deere, Carnival, AirAsia, they're also all increasing. I think travel is. There's a lot of focus. It's the seasons have shifted a lot with some of those brands. Carnival's a great example where traditionally February, March used to be a really big period for them. But that was a really slow start. It's sort of like that big peak of travel expenditure around that period sort of has shifted, but now they're seeing best ever months of sales. So they're starting to invest a lot more in the brands, but across the industry, in all the categories, FMCG, those guys are spending more. Pharmaceutical, there's bigger spends every year, and the sales have been incredibly strong. So for us, the economic situation has not, like no clients for us have been scared about what's happening, about the recession, and they're sort of all talking around pushing forward and continuing on with spend. So I don't know if that's different to a lot of the other agencies and clients that are out there, but for what we're hearing is that there's not as much fear. They all pulled a lot back through COVID, so it's almost like now they're really trying to invest and they're trying to ramp it up to stay on top of that. And even with interest rates hikes starting to slow down, there's even more confidence from the marketer side of things that they're going to continue to see that sort of success moving forwards as well. So yeah, a lot of interest in increasing spends. And interestingly, we're starting to see a lot of conversations around some of the traditional channels coming back into the mix, and sort of some of those clients that were very focused on conversion are now starting to think a bit more long term and putting more budget into brand work, which is kind of a really nice place to be.
Isn't that interesting? And as well, I don't know how many conferences I've been to where everyone just talks about invest in the brand, and you'll see the results long term. So it's good to see that someone's listening to that and it's working. Tell us, how can vendors best engage with agencies in your mind? Like, you've seen both sides of the equation. What are tips or recommendations about best engaging with an agency?
Look, I think what we're seeing at the moment is every vendor and every salesperson and every group wants to do lunch and learns. They want to engage so much and really have meetings and be able to share their story. What we're seeing now is there is so many small media companies, and it seems like everyone started their own out of home. They've got a few panels and they're all trying to sell it, and they're all trying to get in front of the team. We've had to almost pull back on lunch and learns and things like that because they were booked up until the end of the year, and the team started to find that they weren't being as valuable, and then you start to see those numbers dwindle a little bit. I really do think the best way that vendors can really engage with the team, there's probably two things that we would love to see from that. And it's kind of the regular updates that don't take time. So it's a little bit of the lay of the land of here's my industry, here's what we know, here's where sort of everyone's sitting, and that sort of communication, which is an easy and digestible format that we can send out. So there is some vendors out there that do a really great job in terms of almost like the updates and newsletters, but quite tailor-made by their sales team that looks after the agency. So there is a little bit of a link to some of our clients. And it's a really great way to keep everyone engaged and everyone keep the brands top of mind. So that's an important one. Proactives as well are still really great where there's clients that are open to it. So it's a little bit more of a, that we're getting sort of everyone's relevant to everyone all the time, and there's a lot of stuff coming through. I think from an agency side, we need to be better, me particularly, but also some of our team need to get better at it, being able to get back and open the door up for a lot of the sales guys. I think it's a time concern that we have in terms of there's so many meetings, there's so much going on, that it is, I feel that from an agency perspective, and I'm sure that a lot of you probably feel the same, that lack of response or the slowness in response and making time available is a problem. So it's really trying to find that balance between everyone trying to find the time to meet with everyone and how much time we have, because it's very easy for my whole team to be in meetings from 9 to 5 if they were catching up with every salesperson out there.
Yeah, I probably echo those words. Like on our side, I've never seen so many vendors out there trying to come through the IMAA, and we had to say no to 123 vendors last year who wanted to be a part of the program. You mentioned before that you get a lot approached every week. How many, you've probably never seen so many as well. How many, times do you guys get approached by a vendor a week? And there's only so much time in the day. How many are you seeing on a weekly basis at the moment?
So we were doing, the teams themselves should be seeing and catching up with a lot of the regular guys that they're sort of working with. So clients that have channels, I think it's super critical for the team to be across a lot of that sort of industry and that category, which is where that, I guess, overarching, this is my industry, this is the lay of the land, really helps, because it gives those guys a bit of the top line view. So it actually can save a little bit of time and those meetings can be a bit more pointed. The biggest challenge is definitely a lot of smaller vendors. And I think ones that we're not really utilizing right now, and I'll use out of home as a great example. There is a lot of suppliers out there, and a lot of suppliers do a small amount of niche sort of panels, and it is quite a challenge to get that across the line and sort of almost sell that into a client when they have X amount of budget, which has to be used as efficiently as possible, and you sort of need to drive that value. There's definitely opportunities, and this is where having that information top of hand for our team, wherever there's the right opportunity for that client, and something really interesting and really effective, I think it's going to be really valuable for them to have that information at hand. It's just we probably have 30 to 40 vendors reaching out every week, trying to catch up with teams, and it is incredibly challenging to find time. And for myself particularly, and I know there's probably a few on the call that have been trying to get meetings with myself, it's very, the weeks are absolutely chock-a-block, and it is really challenging to find time to catch up and do a lot of lunches and learns, especially, well, even just lunches and updates, especially when from a leadership side of things, we're not as across the campaign planning. We don't really know a lot of the brands and the plans coming up. So direct team involvement, I think is really critical, and the teams that are sort of working on the clients. And I think I'd be curious to know from a lot of the vendors and the sales reps out there of what you would want us to be doing better from our side of things in terms of how you guys are connecting with us. I think that'd be really important, because from our side, it's hard to know what you guys need, especially when we're sort of saying, oh, we can't do this, we can't catch up, or you'll have to speak to that team. But if there's certain ideas or certain things that you guys want to ask of us to do better, then I think that's really, really important. So yeah, be really open to hear that from you guys today, if you were willing to share, if there was anyone.
You can put that in the chat, or if you want, we can collate some feedback as well and flick that through to Jimmy later on today. Proactive pitches, are they useful? Is it a mixed bag? What are your thoughts?
They're useful at planning time, which is a really hard thing to know, and it's going to come down to the reps. Planning time to have those different ideas is so powerful, and you kind of, whenever you're putting a response together, as long as it's still relevant, if it is in and around that sort of 3-month window of when clients are planning in their stages, so useful. Once a client, most of our clients, once they've locked in the budget for the year, it's very challenging for them to even get more budget out of that. But where they are best received and often get a run in terms of the presentations is around that planning period. So my advice would be just for each different client, because everyone plans completely different, is finding out when that is, and around that time is where, and at the start of that period, is when you'd be sending stuff through, because I think they're very, very valuable. And every client is asking for stuff outside of the normal spots and dots. So whatever we can deliver for them in terms of, here's this really interesting idea that we could do something different. They're all looking for extra cut through. And particularly, we've seen clients now finding little pockets of budget that they've got in other areas. It's particularly in retail that they're trying to pull out and put back into working media. So if there's ways we can navigate some of that and steal some money back off the Coles and Woolworths and side of the world and bring it back into the agency and into their media budgets, even taking budget from creative, they're trying to get more working media. Seems to be a theme in the market at the moment. So that's where proactives can sort of outside the box sort of stuff can help. Okay, we'll find a different pocket of money for that.
You mentioned planning cycles. Is every client's planning cycles different?
Yeah, everyone is different. Some clients, and not only planning cycles, but financial years across the organization. There's probably 6 or 7 different financial years that we manage. So not only some clients plan for the annually, some clients plan quarterly. So yeah, everyone is completely different, but it would just change on the clients.
Yeah, so just knowing when those cycles happen. I know when I was on the tools, it was you know, sometimes you will get a proactive pitch for a $4 million NRL sponsorship over 12 months that only be suitable for 4 clients in Australia, and it's like, you know, understand the audience and the planning cycles and the clients, and then, you know, make it relative, and that'll work for you.
Yeah, and I'd say on the back of that, Sammy, that's probably one of the biggest questions to ask teams is when you are catching up with them is what is the planning cycle. It's not really a question that we get asked virtually at all from many people, but with that you kind of get the knowledge of when is the right time to really start engaging with the team and meet with the team just before that starts. And then, you know, also for the rest of the year that it may not be a fact of having to try and get too many meetings in, but that's where it might be just top of mind. And here's what's new and here's what's changing. Here's what the measurement is and here's how we're performing through the year. So I'd say that's the most critical question to ask.
Yeah, I think that we've done 3. That's probably one of the best nuggets of gold we've got. It's really good. What makes a good pitch? When timeliness, obviously. Outside of that,
in terms of a vendor pitch,
a vendor pitch. So when the vendors are coming to you and going, we've got an idea. What you know, timeliness, but also what else kind of resonates with you and your team?
Look, a good pitch for the team would make it easy for them to be able to pass that information and give it to the marketers to then sell into the business. So any sort of pitch like that, where it's backed up with audience numbers and measurement and how that is measured. But really it's what we're seeing is the single pitches where it's just one element are not getting through the line as easy as here's what a total package looks like, and here's a few different elements, and here's a few touch points of how they connect together. So not everybody obviously has that ability in terms of the formats or the screens or the panels or the properties that they have. But if there is a way to link a few of those things together and tie it in with some sort of measurement piece or brand lift study has always been super, super successful. So everything that clients are trying to look for is justification at the moment in terms of what media is working. And yeah, if there's a way to link in some sort of measurement, if there's a way to tie it into some sort of flybys or some sort of data that actually sort of links into what the clients are trying to deliver, then they're able to sell it in a lot easier. And our team are able to sell it in a lot easier. It's when there's a few questions still left on the table, or if I'm not sure if it'll work, that's where we sort of get a lot of shutdown. But anything that sort of just gives them the confidence to sell in, it's absolute fire.
And tell us, you know, for probably some of the sales guys in there, you know, getting cut through, you've been, you know, probably flogged a few pages in Waves magazine or some surfing magazine. You know, how do you get cut through? You know, particularly when time is, you know, time's really hard to grab your team from. How would you recommend getting cut through out there?
Into the agency itself?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how open agencies are to this, and I would be open to this, is the office manager or whoever that key person or key point of contact is in the business, hopefully that they're able to share a list with you guys of here's our client or our different client teams, and here's the key point of contact in each of those client teams, and the clients that they work on. I think with that as a starting point, it's always the hardest part when I was in sales around understanding who was working on what and who to speak to. it might alleviate a lot of the effort and might cut down a lot of the effort in terms of who you need to speak to for different things. And also for certain proactives or certain opportunities, it then means you can reach out to the right person, which saves you sending stuff to the people that aren't relevant. So as a first step is that. Second step, because we've got everyone trying to find meetings and trying to book in time and catch up on everything, there's a little bit of sending across sort of little nuggets of information on the occasion. But look, even lunches and things like that people are a bit worried about taking lunches these days because they've still got so much to do. We're a 9-day fortnight and we work remotely on Mondays and Fridays anyway. So the only 3 days that we're in the office are Tuesday to Thursday, which just means that in those 3 days, that's when people can plan their meetings, which is obviously only 60% of the week in terms of the working week that they've got. And in that time, they're also catching up with their teams, and that's where a lot of the collaboration and stuff happens. So anything that you guys can do to help alleviate taking time away from team, but giving them the information is going to be super, super important. And that's like the best way to engage them.
Amazing. From a client perspective and your client perspective, what channels are hot at the moment? You know, we saw earlier on the BVOD CTV, out of home, digital video. Anything outside of that you guys are seeing that's quite hot?
Yeah, so we're kind of looking at channels in a different way now. So the age-old sort of media channel planning of agencies hasn't changed, but consumer behavior has. So the way we look at channels at Flow is in sort of 4 buckets. So the first bucket is communication. And this is kind of all the channels from audio to visual that we're pushing a message out. So now when we're starting to present to clients, it's not just TV, it is a combination of screens, but it's also anything audio and visual that falls into there. So it could be TV, out of home, radio, could be anything like that where we're pushing a message out. The other bucket is information. So this is where they have to find us. So this could be their own websites, could be search, could be advertorials. The third bucket is conversation. So where the brands are having a 2-way conversation with clients. And then the fourth bucket is interaction. So it's how they experience a brand from start to finish. So it could be in events, could be point of sale, could be everything. So what they're starting to do now is looking at each of those buckets and seeing where there's a gap. So whilst they might have activity on TV and BVOD that covers that communication part, they might say, well, we're not actually communicating and having that conversation with clients very much. So there's this real interest in laddering up a lot of those channels with other types of channels in there. And because of that, we're starting to see, and that's probably what's driving a lot of this shift back to some of the traditional channels as well outside of digital. And digital is always going to be really exciting and obviously is always hot and all the rest. And you can obviously measure that a lot. But now because we're starting to see a lot more market mix modeling coming into it and a lot of these questions around effectiveness, we're starting to find solutions and clients that are really willing to test that. So some of the traditional channels, like your radios and your TVs and your out-of-homes, are actually starting to come back into the forefront of the conversations we're having with marketing. And when budgets are increasing, after the last few years where conversion and sales has been the core focus, digital was the be-all or end-all. But now when clients are starting to ask around brand side of things, we're really starting to see that sort of traditional mix coming back into it and starting to see a bit more of a holistic picture. And that's sort of where those 4 buckets really come into it and sort of really help tell that whole marketing story. Yeah.
And that kind of leads on to the next question really well, Jimmy, that, you guys have a very strong reputation for being a big innovator and driver of technology within the sector. Just looking at your gaming machine in your office, which could probably, power the Hubble telescope, the technology involved. But what do you see the future of media? You mentioned mixed media modeling. What are your thoughts on the next 5 years of media?
It's a really deep question. We have, look, everything right now is based on effectiveness. And every client, big and small, are just trying to prove to their board that the media is working, what they're spending. And so this market mix modeling conversation on so many levels of effectiveness is the one thing that we're having with all of our clients. And it's really interesting. We've just hired one of the leads from Kantar. So that's going to sort of start to change a little bit of that conversation internally of how we can actually measure media. But they're starting to pull out budget and sort of find extra budget to put some of this modeling in place. And there's a few guys out there doing it in different sort of levels, but even in terms of share of socials, share of search and things like that. So technology is going to help us, and modeling is going to help us find effectiveness. I think AI is an interesting one, which, look, from a media side of things, some interesting stuff that we've seen now is really sort of helping on a planning process for us in terms of there's things like these virtual research groups. So instead of us having to find a group of mums that have kids to sort of test out products or test out creative, now there's a couple of companies out there that you can actually say, using virtual reality, I want you to be a mum with 2 children who's a busy day and do all this sort of stuff. And I want you to tell me what you feel about this product if we were to ask it to you. And so you can give them the AI this information and they will respond in a way that a mum with 2 kids would actually answer that. Super interesting. And it's going to sort of, again, it's AI, so it's only going to get better and better as we go. But that sort of conversation, that sort of technique is going to be really interesting in how we plan. So I don't know where it's going to go in 5 years. It seems like it's gone so far in 1 year. I think it'll become hygiene in all the businesses. I don't think we'll be talking about AI in terms of processes for a long time. But equally, whilst there's a lot of technology, I still am a firm believer that you need to balance that with that human side and that strategy and that thinking and creativity. Because if you don't have that, you're sort of missing such a big piece. And there was a chart that I saw years and years ago where it was basically data and technology in the world is tripling every second, but the human brain is still quite linear. So this gap is getting bigger and bigger between technology and the human brain. So the aim is to try and use the technology, but then still have that strategy and that really clear focus from us to try and minimize that gap. And I think it's super important. So yeah, as technology grows, I think the importance on strategy and thinking and the human part is going to be even more important as well.
Yeah, amazing. It's a really interesting time. And again, like this year has been with the, just launching with ChatGPT and all those things. I think it's, where we go and where we'll be in 12 or 18 or months down the track is going to be fascinating. Last 2 questions to steal your time. First one is best advice for someone on the sales side. And the second part is career tips. Any career tips?
Career tips. Start your own business. It's the best thing ever. It's actually a weird mix of stress and challenge and excitement, and it's just one of the most exciting things. Career tips. People are going to hate me for saying this, but moving around and trying different things was literally the best thing that I did until I really found the direction I wanted to go. So experiencing different channels, expanding your knowledge. There's a lot of people that can get dropped into a silo, particularly now, and particularly on the sales side, you can become an absolute expert in one format. But in the future, as you grow, it might limit the options out there. So definitely try, just focus on whatever you're super passionate in and then start putting pieces in place to go that direction. That's probably my only advice as well. I don't really have any other advice. Good advice, at least.
Jimmy, we've taken up 25 minutes of your time. Thank you so much for that. Really, really insightful. Probably the big thing for me was about the sales. The planning cycle was really, really good, but really, really insightful, and probably one of the dare I say, don't tell them the other guests, but probably the best one we've had to date. So thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate it. Now I'm just going to run everyone through a couple of other updates very, very quickly. What's coming up? 2024 partnership conversations are coming up. It's going to be exactly the same in terms of funding for last year. We're going to do a session on the 14th of September at 11 o'clock. We'll send the leaders an invite for that. It's going to be an update of what's happening next year, all the bits and pieces as we grow and build on last year's awesome events. So a couple of the points. If you haven't already put your business down to host the IMAA, we're hot desking in each one of the vendor partners. So let us know. We spent some time at News at O, I think at SEA tomorrow, and then every week after that. So we can do sessions with your team around indies. We can update everyone. We can have a lunch. We can brainstorm ideas. We're here to help and support you guys. In the events running home for the year, we've got our principal and partner night in Brisbane. We had that the other week. So the big thing is this is where we are to date. Tonight, we've got our outdoor event in Sydney, and there'll be one, I think, in 2 weeks in Melbourne. Then after that, we launched the Female Leaders of Tomorrow mentoring program with Wendy Gower. We have got a principal and partner night in Sydney. Now, this night is also, we're going to reward all of our partners for great service. So at the moment, our members are filling out surveys. Jimmy, I hope your team's still at yours. Filling out surveys on each of the partners about who do a great job, and then we're going to do an award ceremony at the Principal in Partner Night on the 14th of September. Then the big event of the year, the major event, it's Who's Who in the Media Zoo, held at a freaking zoo. How awesome is that? So this is going to be, everyone's been invited to that. And then there's going to be an amazing after party for that. This should be the highlight of the media calendar this year. And we're really, really excited to have everyone there. That's November 2nd, held in Darling Harbour at a zoo. And there's a few more major announcements to happen with that. But I think 31 or 2 of our media partners are involved with this. It's going to be the biggest event of the media calendar. We'll have an AGM and a Christmas party at the end of the year. This is what I was talking about for the awards. There's going to be awards for each one of these categories this year. We're going to build on that next year for probably a larger awards as this grows. But we're really, really excited about this. It's coming out of the Pulse survey that the members are filling out this week. So be nice to everyone. More next year. So it's going to kick off with Clean Up Australia Day. So think about that for your partners, the vendors. So think about that is if you want to be involved with that, we're going to go around Australia and help clean up everyone, partner with all the agencies. We're going to have a conference. It's going to be called the Greatest Media Show Conference in the world in March or February. We're just building out the lineup for that. It's going to be the biggest thing we've ever done. International Women's Day, possible TV event in March, Indie Census happening towards April. More Melbourne events, so a stronger focus on Melbourne. So the ultimate scavenger hunt through Melbourne, and also a principal and partner night down there, trivia night in Sydney, and many, many things in between. So that's a little snapshot of those things coming through. The conference, as I mentioned before, the greatest media show on earth. We're really, really excited about this. It's going to be held at the Entertainment Quarter. We're going to have 2 cinemas. We're going to have looking at conversations with CMOs, thought leaders, mental wellness, all the hot topics done for the indie environment, 2 cinemas, and then also a networking event afterwards at the QT Hotel. And as well, if you guys have any talent, you might have access to an Olympic person, athlete, or an A-lister who might be able to talk about an inspirational moment in their life. Would love to hear from you. Would love to speak about putting them up on stage as well. We're looking for some keynote speakers to really talk about some big things. So reach out to us if you have access to any of those people. Coming up, Jackie L is going to be our next one in November 14th at 10 o'clock. You'll receive an invite for that. Jack's going to talk about all things. She's, a media thoroughbred that's been through multi-generations of media and watch how she sees the market. Guys, we're right on the money there, but thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. If anyone's got any questions, please reach out and ask. A massive thank you to Jimmy Hyett for joining us today. Really, really insightful. I'm just looking at some of the notes here. Everyone's saying thankful for you being part of it. We will share the presentation after this. Any questions, please reach out. Thank you, everyone, for your support of the independent sector. Have a great day, guys.